discussing last week, we discussed the different aspects of Kibbud Av V'Em. We were discussing the opinion of the Rambam. The Rambam's opinion is that this Kibbud Av V'Em, even on a father, even on a parent who's a Rasha. The Rambam writes, there's a Chi of Kibbud Av V'Em, even on a Rasha. Some disagree, but that's the Shittas HaRambam. So the question they ask on the Rambam is, he seems to go against the Gemara, because if you're a real brisker, it's a shver Gemara. But either way, there's a Gemara against the Rambam that says that in Baba Metzia, that if a person, a father took money beribis and he had it and he died, so all things being equal, the kids aren't obligated to return that money. It's only if if the father did tshuva and said he wanted us to return the illicit money, so al Kibbud Av V'Em, you would return it. So it's master in the Gemara. There's only time there's a chiyuv of Kibbud Av V'Em on a Rasha if he did tshuva, but not categorically if the father did not do tshuva. So then there would be no chiyuv about Kibbud Av V'Em to return the money. Whether they have to if they went to Beis Din, maybe they decide for other reasons, but as Kibbud Av V'Em, they wouldn't be chayiv to return the money. So the kasha is, according to the Rambam, why not? Categorically, there's a chiyuv of Kibbud Av V'Em on a father, even if he's a Rasha. And the famous Gemara in Brachas, that Chizkiyahu, he dragged his father's bones in the street. What happened to Kibbud Av V'Em for a Rasha? So that's what we explained. Rav Shechter explains that basically that there's Kibbud Av V'Em. We all know there's Kibbud Av V'Em. We discussed Kibbud Av V'Em in terms of Adam L'Makom and Adam L'Chavero, as it's the link between the two the luchos, the two tablets. That the first tablet's been Adam L'Makom and the second Adam L'Chavero. And Kibbud Av V'Em has both aspects, as the Minchas Chinuch and others point out. So there's two reasons in general why there's a chiyuv of Kibbud Av V'Em. It stems from a Bet Adam L'Chavero aspect as well as a Bet Adam L'Makom. Bet Adam L'Chavero, it's out Priyas Chov. You owe your parents so much, they brought you into the world, they did everything for you, they changed your diapers, it's Priyas Chov, or as the Chinuch writes, Hakara Satov, as Rav Moshe writes when he discusses the question of a ger, Sheniskayer, he has a chiyuv of Kibbud Av V'Em on his biological parents, and he goes into this. It's so fundamental, al takaras atov, that they brought you into the world, so you chayav. There's an aspect of priyas chov, and then there's another aspect of al b'adam l'makom, of al hukish kavod kavod shamayim, that we know that we have three creators, Father, Mother, and God, and therefore our parents are like our creators. As an Indian of Kibbud Av V'Em, they brought us into the world. It's Hukush Kavod Kavod Shamayim. So the Rav Shechter explains Pshat in the Rambam, but this is the Pshat there. The Rambam is talking about B'chayim. When the Rambam says it's a chiyuv of Kibbud Av V'Em on a father Rasha, that's B'chayim, that's out the Priyas Chov. So whether he's a Rasha or not, who cares? You benefited, he did so much for you, and you still owe your father the proper kavod. But when it comes to Bet Adam L'Makom, the Hukush Kavod Kavod Shamayim, so that only applies to an Adam Kasher or a Tzaddik. But a person who's a Rasha, there's no Hukush Kavod Kavod Shamayim. So he wants to say the Rambam Shita is, Dafka, when does the Rambam hold there's a chiyuv of Kibbud Av V'Em on a Rasha? That's only B'chayim, out to Bet Adam L'Chavero. But La'acha Misa, even the Rambam would agree, as we see from the two Gemaras, that La'acha Misa, there's no chiyuv of Kibbud Av V'Em out the Bet Adam L'Chavero, and if the father's a Rasha, so then there's no Bet Adam L'Makom either afterwards. And we just pointed out that those are even within Kibbud Av V'Em, we find the two aspects of Bet Adam L'Makom and Adam L'Chavero, and distinctions between B'chayim and La'acha Misa. Do you have a question?
When you're dealing with commandments from the Bible, it would be that the Almighty has said, so why are you putting in reasons? If you set your reasons up, it's setting it up like this. If you give a reason, I'm thanking them for this life, and you pull it out like that, then your whole thing falls apart. Noach lo ladam shalom nivra. I'm going to thank them for putting me into this world that is a very tough world, and that's how we paskin. Noach lo ladam shalom nivra. I have to make the most of it. I would not give a reason. You want to say it's an idea, it's something to think about, but don't base yourself upon the reason of thankfulness, because there is no thankfulness for them putting me into the situation. Of course, I'm happy that I'm alive, but according to what the Gemara says, it's Noach lo ladam shalom nivra is how we paskin. So therefore, the reason is for a chorus. Don't do me that favor. You set me up. I can fall down flat on my face because of all the.
And even the case where a person never saw the parent.
The parents didn't change their diaper or something like that, but
right.
didn't do
no, right. I'm saying that's. I know he says, but we're just explaining because we have a contradiction between what the Rambam is saying and the Gemara. So we have to reconcile the Rambam with the Gemara.
But what are those two reasons? Are those two reasons that they seem to be independent of the mitzvah? The Torah says,
no, right.
Is it only
what's the
subject
nature
to those two reasons?
No, so what's the nature of the chiyuv? So we know that kibbud avim is both be'adam l'makom be'adam l'chavero. That there's two. Because on one hand we see our parents as our creators. On the other hand, that people too, and we have a chiyuv of a priyas chov also. So the two aspects we see in kibbud avim. So basically.
So are they saying that kabbelas avim is a mitzvah only with these two caveats? If one of these two caveats hold that's what the pasuk is talking about, or is this regardless of the pasuk, because there's a priyas chov, you have a chiyuv?
Right. Well, I would say that's where it comes. I mean, they're explaining. The Torah says there's a chiyuv of kibbud avim. And therefore, darshin and time with the kra. The bottom line, we have a mitzvah of kibbud avim. So everyone agrees. In a normal scenario, nothing to talk about.
Well, just keep it up. He just stood up. His father came in.
He's demonstrating it. Very good. But everyone agrees, kibbud avim, that's it. Because there's a mitzvah in the Torah. We don't have to make any. So the question is, then, and in 90% of the cases, there's nothing to talk about. There's a chiyuv of kibbud avim. It's only in a case where a special scenario where one of your parents are Rishon or some other thing, then you have to analyze in order to figure out the couple of nafkaminas in the rare cases. You need the extreme cases to figure out the principle, because there's a chiyuv of kibbud avim because the Torah says so, period. But now to fully understand the depths of what does that mean, where does it come from? So then, where does it stem from? Ben adam l'chaver l'makam. So then the Mefarshim have to go in to examine what it is. But of course, there's a mitzvah of kibbud avim in the discussion. It's only special cases, whether Aviv Russia or whatever the case, we're entertaining the possibility of the wouldn't be, so then we have to know why there isn't. In other words, the Rambam.
So the way you're explaining it is the mitzvah is talui on these criteria.
No, it's not, that's not the mitzvah's talui. The mitzvah was given, and they're explaining how how it was given, what the basis for it was given on. It starts off with the pasuk in the Chumash that kibbud avim. And then the Mefarshim as always, they try to analyze what's the nature of the mitzvah. And then, then you come over.
And what they're saying is it's telling on these two things, and if the guy's a Russian and he's dead, then there's nothing because
right. That's right, but he's a Russian and dead, right? But
so that means it is totally on these two aspects.
Yeah, but I know. But first, it's the chiyuv came first, and we're explaining we're just qualifying what the chiyuv is. It's not that the reasons are changing. I'm saying that.
Yeah. Also, I don't know. This Chizkiyahu was a very was it Chizkiyahu who dragged the bones? Chizkiyahu was a righteous person. So people could have started praising the parents of Chizkiyahu. Maybe it was a special case. You have to drag the bones to show, because the same way as people praise Amatya but Karma Imadavram, you praise someone who's a good person. You praise their mother and father that brought them into life. So he didn't want people to start to praise his father, because to emphasize that his father was truly a Russian. Don't give him any schus on this, that I'm here. Whatever I did on my own, not because of my father. So you have to drag the bones, so maybe an exception to the rule in terms of how you relate to a parent. He just had to denigrate the bones of his father so people would praise his father. And then once they praise the father, they're going to be praising a Russia, and they can identify with the Russia, and it can lead to a slippery slope. So it's a special case with Christianity.
Right. And in general, as we have in other things with Melech, there could be exceptions, right? So that's one possibility in the Rambam. But the question is there. It's how you want to reconcile. But the Rambam, right, categorically seems to say there's a chiyuv of kibbud avim on our father, and then you have to deal with the different gemaras. So it's not the only way to answer up the question. That's how Rav Shafti answers it. That the difference b'chayim ben la'achamisa. And along those lines, this isn't unique actually to kibbud avim, but we'll see other mitzvahs by adam l'chavero. We also find that there'll be elements of adam l'makam as well, as we'll see. So let's say, for instance, the Isser of Lashon Hara. We all know, we're familiar with the Isser of evil gossip, speaking about someone. So there's an Isser in the Torah of Lashon Hara, and in fact, there's a famous kasha that the Rav Yaakov deals with, Rav Elchanan Wasserman, the Chasim Sofer, at Alta of Kelm, in terms of, as we're going to start reading on the next, we've probably read enough already, but we're going to start reading soon about the story of Mechiras Yosef. And it goes into the details of how the brothers treated Yosef. So it doesn't necessarily put the brothers, and you look at the Mefarshim, they give Cheshbon as what? He was a Navi Sheker, all the Mefarshim, when we go into the Parsha, you could go into the deeper meanings. But the bottom line is, the Torah seems to be talking negative about the brothers of Yosef, or if we go in by Miriam, Lashon Hara about Moshe. So the question is, how could the Torah tell us? The Torah itself tells us not to say Lashon Hara. The Torah itself is telling us all these things about these different people. Why isn't that an Isser of Lashon Hara? Why does the Torah go into details of Miriam, of the whole story? Rabbi Yaakov asked it specifically by Mechiras Yosef and Vayeshev, where Yaakov is, but it's not limited. And Rav Elchanan actually doesn't ask it on the Torah, he asked it on the Mishnah in Yuma, which talks about the different families that are mentioned for Genai. So he asked a similar question, is why does the Mishnah go into denigrating different families?
How could you record history without telling what you call Lashon Hara?
It's good we have a historian in the house now.
That's Shimon Schwartz's challenge. That's why he says that the Jews can't do history.
Oh, that's not a fact.
Well, is there Lashon Hara on people?
It would appear.
Dead people?
That's what we're going to get to. So hopefully when we finish this year, we'll have a heter for you.
In Parshas Yisro, it would appear, which usually take the scene by surprise, that Kibbud Avim is on the second luchos and not on the first. Because in Yisro, the dividing line, there's one pay in the whole of Seres Luchos, and it's after the third dibur, which has the effect of making the two, if those were the two luchos, the two would be roughly equal, which is miskabel al das. And Kibbud Avim would then come out on the second luchos. The pay, the psucha, is after the third dibur.
Oh, interesting, yeah.
So that the two sides are about equal in number of words, because Shabbos and Lohiyi are about equal.
Right.
All the rest take up no space.
Right, you could say, so then according to the Abshat, the Dagish would be on the B'nam Chavero aspect, but it's interesting. Right, either way, that's the way the Mefarshim assume. It's an interesting point anyway, yeah, in terms of...
That's in the Chumash.
No, right, no, but I'm saying in terms of how they divided, it gets into how you divide the Luchos. This going, and I guess which version you had in terms of the Luchos.
Yeah.
Right. But either way, so that's the question, is how could the Torah, which gives an Isser, in fact the Chasim Sofer says, it's crazy, so what will people answer right off the bat? Which maybe it's a good answer, maybe it's not. Well, we know there are some exceptions to the rule of Lashon Hara. Or are they exceptions? We know there's a concept of toeles, that if you say something for toeles, for a purpose, for a gain, for something good, so then that's one of the exceptions to the rule. In fact, it's an interesting Afike Yam. He was one of the Talmidim of Rav Chaim Brisker. So he has it in his Akdama. So he writes, it's actually on Parshas Vayeshev, but he has a nice drush on the Chumash, but the halacha is true. He gives three reasons, three stipulations you need when you want to give Lashon Hara the Toelet. Number one, that's the way it has to be done. You can't have any other way besides that way. If that's the only way, if you get the message done without saying Lashon Hara, then you should do it. It has to be done exactly the way, no exaggerations, or as much as we can exaggerate, as we'll see Rabbi Chanan shortly. And then the third thing has to be for Toela. So he explains the pasuk in the beginning of Vayeshev. It says V'hu nar. Why does the Torah emphasize Yosef being a nar? And it says something V'have, and it says Aviham. So he says, why is Yosef called? Why is a nar? Because they wanted to show that Yosef was a nar. No one took him seriously. He couldn't go ahead and tell the brothers and rebuke them. They wouldn't to listen to him. So the Torah is giving me a reason, nar. Okay, he couldn't tell them directly. But not the word was sapir, but it uses the word, I think, v'have, I have to look at the pasuk, but something like that. A much more direct lashon, that he's just saying it over exactly the way it happened. And it says aviham. They talk about like their father, not his father. Again, because in order to show it's a toeles, but whatever the drushva you want, but those are the conditions the Chafetz Chaim bring down, that in order to say lashon hara for toeles, you have to have no other way. It has to be done as exact as you can, and it has to be a toeles. It's interesting chakira in the Achronim about what's pshat that lashon hara is mutter for toeles. Is it pshat that when it's the toeles, it's not lashon hara? Like, is it by definition, if I'm doing something for toeles, then it's no longer lashon hara, or not? No, it is lashon hara, but the good of the toeles overrides the bad, whatever it's going to happen. Like, in fact, as they bring, I think as the pasuk brings down, it's right next to Osamad Adam Reyecha, Oseiach Rechel Ba'amecha. So obviously, if you could save someone's life, or that's the extreme case, by telling someone, then obviously you do it. But it is lashon hara, but the mitzvah of Osamad Adam Reyecha takes precedence. So that's a discussion, a chakira in the Achronim. And there's a fundamental question in terms of what is the nature of the issue of lashon hara in general. In terms of, it is what they call like an isser mazik. Like, is it because I'm going to cause harm to that person, like a be'elam l'chaveiro? Or no, it's an isser midos. The isser is that no, I shouldn't be going. If I start talking lashon hara all the time, it's going to impact. I'm going to become
the neshama.
Exactly. So therefore. It's a different. So there's a lot of questions we'll get into later or another time in terms of nafkaminas to that, but in terms of whether it will be a tremendous difference if it's let's say so saying lashon hara for toeles is one thing, but in terms of who let's say, could you tell lashon hara? There's a discussion in the Achronim. Could you tell lashon hara without mentioning the name of the person? And I don't mean by mentioning not name, people know who you're talking about. I mean, no one knows who you're talking about. But could you speak lashon hara in general without telling? So if it's an isser mazik, then you're not causing. No one knows who you're talking about. You're not causing any harm on the person. But if it's an isser midos, you're still going around gossiping. Isn't a good midah? That's a whole discussion we'll come back to. So either way, so with toeles. So therefore, someone to say when the Torah writes things, is to learn the lessons for all the futures. Maybe that's one of the terms for history.
What not to do.
Exactly, what not to do.
There's also another Torah that Rav Yaakov Weinberg speaks about. He says whenever you have great people like the Shiftei Kab by Yehuda and Tamar, that it gives us strength to say the authenticity of the Torah, because every other book showed the righteousness of the virtue of all their leaders. But here we're showing that yes, they're human beings. So the Kodesh Baruch Hu says that even Moshe, by the Shemona Prakim, that he screamed Shemona Amorim. So it shows that they're human beings, and the Torah has authenticity, which one is the prime principles which we're fighting now in our generation, that the Torah is an authentic book. It's authenticity, said Rabbi Yaakov Weinberg, is because it shows that the leaders had flaws.
Right, as opposed
to the New Testament where nobody had flaws.
Right,
and maybe the Quran.
Right, and everyone's a saint. And in fact, and then on that discussion, there's a further.
That's a big toeles.
Right, but then there's a further. Within that, there's a further discussion.
In Art Scroll also nobody has flaws.
So maybe it's not authentic.
Maybe the Art Scroll.
But how exactly do we derive lashon hara from Yosef Rachel Ba'amecha? The two are not directly connected.
No, right. That's how I'm just pointing out. in terms of the chakira, in terms of the nature, whether it would toelis is mutter, so they connect l'soch u'rachot to lo samod. Right, but it's not a direct link in terms of they have, the many places where the Chafetz Chaim brings in others. Basically, like Chafetz Chaim.
The case of Lashon Hara is not implied in the pasuk of Lo Selach Bamecho.
Right, number one, there are other sources also. I'm saying, and just in terms of this lima, they connected to, but basically, like the Chafetz Chaim got a lot of his stuff from Rabbeinu Yonah, because the only couple, obviously the different Gemaras where he picked from. Besides the Gemaras, basically only Rabbeinu Yonah and the Rambam are the only two Rishonim who actually have extensive detail on Lashon Hara. So a lot of the things the Chafetz Chaim in the Sefer got from Rabbeinu Yonah and the Rambam. But when we get into more, we'll get into more the many different sources. This on the point you were making. That is a further discussion, very prevalent today also. So we see the Torah tells us they made mistakes, and Chazal told us our avos, different great people made mistakes. The question, Bisman Hazeh, is: do we have a right to make? Do we have a right to make up other reasons that Chazal didn't tell us? And when you learned it, which seems to be a machlokas of Aaron Kotler and Rav Shimshon Raphael Hirsch, do we have a right that Chazal didn't say it? Do I have a right to say, well, I think this is why it was Esav and Yaakov, they didn't communicate with each other, like Rav Hirsch writes, there was a lack of communication, or Rav Aaron Kotler was famous, that's why in all the Lakewood yeshivas and all the yeshivas developed, because I think it was in the 60s, 70s, he was invited to, it was a Torah Masorah convention, and he was asked, all the teachers there teaching elementary school, high school, they asked him, how should we teach, we need a derech in teaching the Chumash. So one of the things he was very strong on, actually he was responding to some article in some European paper, which wasn't the derech of Aaron to respond to a paper article, but it's a response to an article he read it where I guess someone said something negative about the Avos or something, which
in Yiddish.
Yeah, it was a Yiddish paper, and then it's translated right. So he came out and said, he had strong words, but he came out, we don't have a right. We can't go ahead and judge whatever Chazal told us. The Torah said that, so within that discussion, we even have a further discussion on even if we could learn new things.
He said, I was up there. You
were there, okay.
JJ has got traveled around with this.
Oh, he said, yeah.
Rav Aaron Kotler said that that they are perfect beings. The Avos are perfect beings. They didn't make flaws.
So what about what the Torah says or Chazal?
Whatever it is, but they're still perfect beings. That's what he said. He based it. J.J. Sheffer said because he said that the family from Rav Aaron would not distort his language or something like that. That's what he said. That's why he thinks it's authentic. But that Rav Aaron wasn't quoted from Rav Aaron, it was said over in his name. That in contrast to this article where this person was quoting from different things, and the J.J. Sheffer also wrote from Shamshon ben Raphael Hirsch that there were errors made and they're only human beings. So it was a lecture in YU that they had recently from J.J. Sheffer a few weeks ago.
Oh, he spoke about this, okay.
He spoke about this aspect of Rav Aaron speaking out against that Yiddish article from Europe.
It's a thing. Like people always quote. There are probably more, but people always quote Rav Aaron against the Rav Shimshon. I'm sure there are other people also. But those are the, because he has in his Chumash, he writes these things and different pshatim on the Chumash. So a lot of people don't like, people have tainas because they follow Rav Aaron's school. But either way, so getting back to Lashon Hara. So we see the discussion whether Toelis. So some want to say all these things in the Torah. So the Chasam Sofer says it's ridiculous to say the heter is based on Toelis. So I have to learn every day Lashon Hara. The Chir is Miriam, so I should learn that I shouldn't speak Lashon Hara. But Chasam Sofer doesn't like that.
Torah every day.
Exactly. You chazer every day. Let's learn Lashon Hara, so I learn not to speak Lashon Hara. But either way,
6 remembrances.
Right, exactly. That's what he's talking. So therefore, to someone I say Toelis, but not everyone thinks that's satisfactory. So Rav Yaakov Kamenetsky, when he's talking about Mechiras Yosef, so he says that he has a big chiddush in Parashas Vayeshev, and we'll have to elaborate on it more to fully understand it. He writes that the Isser of Lashon Hara is only B'chayim, is only when someone is alive. However, La'achamisa, which would help us in history. But la'acha misa, there is no isser of lashon hara. Again, there's a chayram that says that you put into chayram if you speak about the dead. He says that's motzi shemra. That's not lashon hara, and he's not recommending. He's not saying it's a good idea to speak about the dead. But in terms of the technical isser of lashon hara, Rav Yaakov Kamenetsky claims the isser only applies b'chayim. So obviously the Torah was talking b'moso, and therefore it's not a problem. That's Rav Yaakov. Rav Elchanan Wasserman has a totally different teretz. He doesn't ask the question. He talks about by the Mishnah Numa, but based on his answer, we could answer up Rav Yaakov's question as well. He wants to say, and we're going to elaborate on this point as well, that really, strictly speaking, if you could say lashon hara, or it wouldn't be lashon hara, but if you could actually give over what happened 100% accurately, you give over exactly the way things happen. In theory, you wouldn't violate lashon hara. The issue with lashon hara is the element of sheker involved, that no one could go ahead and accurately give over. Obviously, to make up a total lie, that's motzi shemra. But lashon hara is saying over a true fact, but not giving it in the proper context. He said it's very hard, impossible for someone to give over something. Like for instance, I don't know if he quotes it, but it reminds me of the Taz in Hilchos Avelis. The Shulchan Aruch talks about the Gemara talks about a mitzvah of giving a eulogy, and in fact it's so difficult to give a proper eulogy. There's a meaning among some Hasidim that they stop giving eulogies, which is a problem also because there's a mitzvah to give a eulogy. But they say no one can give a eulogy properly. So I know, and you go to some eulogies, I'm wondering, who is this guy they're talking about? It's nothing to do with the guy I know, so it becomes a mockery. Like, how could someone just exaggerate so much? Like, so the Shulchan Aruch writes, you could exaggerate a little bit. Something, I don't know the exact lesson. So Taz asks, Mali sheker ma'a, Mali sheker harbe. Like, what do you mean? A little bit pregnant? What do you mean you could lie a little bit, not a lot? So the Taz says, this is the pshat, that no one really knows any person, even if you see different acts they do, but we all do it ourselves. You hear about some act someone did, and then they tell you who it is. Oh, so if you like that person, automatically, oh yeah, but I'm sure this is what happened, he really didn't mean. Automatically, if we like the person, we come up with a reason why it wasn't so bad. And the converse is, if we don't like, oh yeah, I knew that person, he was a Russia, etc., we just pile on. So we really can't be told. So the Taz says, no one really knows anyone exactly, so he's probably a little better than you think he is. So therefore it's okay to do a eulogy a little bit better. Not to exaggerate and make a mockery, but within limits. So Rav Chanan writes, the isser of lashon hara is really, it's the element of sheker involved. You could actually give it over 100% accurate, which he says, it's impossible to. That's why there's an isser of lashon hara, but then it would be mutter. So based on Rav Chanan, however, but the Torah itself, and let's assume the Mishnah as well, they had the ability to give over the events. That's the question on historians, can they do that or not? But if you can give over the events accurately like the Torah, so then there wouldn't be a problem of lashon hara. So we have Rav Yaakov who says it only applies b'chayim, not la'achamisa. And then we have Rav Elchanan who says it's nothing to do with chayim la'achamisa, it has to do with giving it over. We can't. But the Torah which can, so therefore the Torah can give over different events because it wouldn't be lashon hara. So
you said the Torah gives over. There's the Torah Shabbal Peh that also clarifies and explains it, which includes the portion.
Right.
And, there's one very, very restrictive thing that comes out from Moshe Feinstein, and he says that anything in the Torah that you're going to, even if someone would say something, unless it's written down in the Gemara or early Midrashim, you cannot interpret it in a pejorative way. So much so that I have written down with 2 witnesses that Moshe Feinstein said that which the Ramban says, that we are suffering from the Soros, from Soros sending off Hagar, so we will suffer at the hands of Yishma, of the Arabs. He says that is a guide, this is a mistake written down by an error from the scribes, from the Talmidim of the Ramban, and it is not from the Ramban, and the Ramban could not say something pejorative, even Rishonim cannot. So he has a restrictiveness in learning that you cannot interpret the Torah so that you come out with pejorative against not only Avos, but anyone in the Chumshi Torah, that you're interpreting that they did this in a certain way that would be pejorative. So there's a restriction in that sense. So unless it was written down, and if it was written down clearly in the Gemara has a right, because that was the prime golden chain of tradition. So if you have it from the Gemara or early Midrashim, then it could be accepted. So that puts a damper on these people who are wide open for interpretation that says Moses was this and he did it, etc. So there's a restrictiveness, is what I'm saying. So that restrictiveness is stopping any pejorative or lashon hara against someone, that someone can, because you can really interpret the Torah in many ways, and it seems very logical. I've seen someone wrote it down and says this is unacceptable because what Moshe said, you cannot interpret it in a pejorative.
No, right, the many shiva panim, many interpretations, right?
If you apply that restrictiveness to praising a person, where exactly
I
do
don't
you draw
apply
the
it to
line?
praise. Praise you're allowed to. He's saying pejorative. If you can learn on a special source to build up the Avos, or build up Moshe or Miriam or Sarah in a special way, there's no
No, but we
problem.
just quoted where the restriction.
Restriction is to
on-
pejorative.
No, but the previous quotation from the Gabi Hesped.
The Taz,
That's a
yeah.
hesped something else.
Is that the Taz?
That's the
That's
Taz.
the Taz. Now, how do we reconcile that with Rabbi Selevan Kalanov Chasudah? Is there a limit on that?
Yeah, so then that's what
That's
they.
MS in the eyes of the Chosim.
That's what they get into. They discuss that issue there also, in terms of what how much could there's a normal limit of exaggeration. Within there's a norm, and then there's actually where you put that limit. The devil's in the detail. But in terms of that, they discuss it by there as well in terms of this limit. So we have both Rav Yaakov and we have Rav Chanan. So yeah.
That was very strange. You said
Yeah.
with Moshe, because you want really look at something in Ramban where he really lays on the table. You don't have to go to
Chei Chata V'Shogeg, the Ramban writes by Avram.
And by there,
When he went down, left the famine, he says,
He left
Chei-
Israel.
yeah, he did a terrible sin V'Shogeg. That's the Ran's kasha. How does, if Avram didn't know it was V'Shogeg, how does the Ramban know? But
and also that's where Shimshon Bar makes his statement about that he says how can the Ram say that, because we treat them like human beings and so forth. So specifically on that point,
No,
it says it just so happens the Ramban is wrong in this case. The fact is that so you want to say it's Machalas or Moshe is obviously Shimshon Hirsch agrees or disagrees, but I can't see that that's really Moshe.
What?
He disagreed with Moshe.
Yes,
He says that.
he said that they are human and they did make mistakes.
But the thing is, I understand Moshe's statement because if you really want to look at pejorative statement, you have the statement by going down to Egypt. That argument over there was just saying something about that talking about a cause that we're suffering now.
that's much harder to put a connection between.
Yeah.
Here the Ramban says explicitly.
Right, because I'll say that by Esav, the tears of Esav cause something, but to say we're suffering because the Tzara did, that's too much. That I can understand.
At
what
the
Moshe
hands
saying.
of
The Gemara says, Kol mi she'omer David Amel Photo and Torah.
Right.
Even though the
That's
Tosef
He said Chatas.
Yeah.
But where does the issue of truth coming here? I mean,
He said
it's
Chatzon,
emet,
the
right? I mean,
other are different.
even if it is
That's
negative, if it's the truth, the
He
Torah
was
is going to tell it. Because
Chatzon,
the Torah is
Chatzon.
No, right, but it doesn't have to.
Not the-
But Torah didn't pick every narrative, so just leave it out then.
Just means you
In other words, why does it have to go?
miss-
It doesn't have to go into all the details of. Obviously, there's a lot of stuff. The Torah is not a history book. There's a lot of stuff the Torah leaves out. So it's in the I guess according to Rabbi Yaakov, his assumption. The question is, some things you don't have to go into, or there are other ways of going into learning.
Right, because it's not a history book, it's come to teach you something, and if there's a truth
Right.
there, it's just going to tell it.
No, right. So that's what some say. To Ellis, and that's how many give that answer. Chasim Sofer didn't like it, but others did. So So getting back to it, so we have a combination. We have Rav Yaakov and Rav Elchanan. Yeah.
Elchanan's board. Where does he get that from? That the lashon hara is connected to the fact that you're Meshaker.
Yeah. Well, he writes. He's in Kovetz Mamarim, but actually, I don't know if he brings it down here, but to me it seems like because he probably gets it from the story of Zechiras Miriam. That what happened? What's the classic case of lashon hara? The Torah says Miriam spoke against her brother Moshe, and then so what did she say? And why you separated? We're all prophets. Lochein, Moshe is different. So the question is, I thought lashon hara is on the truth. Well, Miriam said was wrong. Why isn't it Motzi Shemra? Miriam said that Moshe was not like the other prophets. So what I thought lashon to this. So I think Rav Hutner over there explains that no, obviously she thought she was saying a true statement, but when you say a true statement, not in the proper context, not accurately giving it over, that's what lashon hara is. So it's obviously you can't just make up a lie, then you don't even get into lashon hara. That's this motzi shemra sheker. But you are giving over in your mind what is a true statement, but you're totally way off. She totally misunderstood the situation.
I find it hard to understand. I mean, if that's the explanation, these other classic examples are so vague in the Torah. If the whole point is that the Torah is giving us a more accurate depiction than we would do ourselves. I mean, is Yehuda and Tamar, is that an accurate depiction? It's so vague, and
you're saying it's so vague because the Torah, because we don't really get the picture from.
Yeah, I mean, you can interpret that any way you want. You can come out with a very negative impression of what went on. So the Torah didn't give us such an accurate depiction to avoid a misconception of what happened.
But you want to say from
that's his whole. I mean, he seems to be saying that the Torah gives us an accurate depiction, but we ourselves we can't make an accurate depiction. But these are accurate depictions, ones that we ourselves find very hard to discern what went on.
Right. It gets into what's the right because when you learn any parasha in the Chumash is going to be. There's going to be many different ways of warning it, and that. But
particularly all these averas or whatever they are.
Especially with all the Gemaras that say don't say David sinned or that's not what. Right, it's a good kasha.
They're particularly vague.
Motzi Shemra is something that you see, and it's an obvious, and you say something that is an obvious sheker about that. What Rabbi Elchanan speaking about is he's quoting beneath the surface is the prophet says. Man sees the outside and Hashem knows the heart of a person. So when someone says something about someone, they did this, this, and this, and their words are not incongruent with who the person is as their heart is, because you don't know what their heart is when they do that action. So you only see something, or their words that they said. You're speaking about either their action or their words, right?
Right.
What is inside them, the lave of a person, you don't know. So when you verbalize something about someone, you are off target in sense of a little bit of sheker, a little bit, but it's not Motzi Shemra, it's lashon hara.
Exactly.
Motzi Shemra would be if you said, he said
you made up
ABC,
something you're totally out of the blue.
He said ABC and you said ABD. Then that would be Motzi Shemra.
Right.
But
that's what he said.
ABC, but you don't know what was in his heart.
Exactly. Maybe he was shogeg, you know, if he was amazed, maybe he did tshuva. That's a Rabbi Elchanan.
I want to try to clarify.
Yeah, that's a Rabbi Elchanan.
That's the answer.
The point so the question is where he got it from. Is there any indication? Anyway,
granted, it's a big chiddush, I agree. Are you allowed to say lashon hara about someone who's in makbid? In fact,
he's giving you rishus. Is it rishus or is it rishus? That's what it is.
Exactly. In fact, there's an interesting Rav Shlomo Kluger. I think in his Imre Shefer Sefer, he asked the kasha by Miriam and Moshe. He says, how did Miriam say lashon hara about Moshe? Because she assumed that Moshe wasn't makbid. Moshe wasn't makbid, and therefore that's why. And the bottom line was that he was makbid. So the kasha on Rav Shlomo Kluger is, who knows Moshe better, Miriam or Rav Shlomo Kluger? I mean, Rav Shlomo Kluger thought she was a makbid. Miriam thought Moshe wasn't makbid. But either way, but the Chafetz Chaim, so that's what he writes. Moshe wasn't makbid, but she didn't know that, and therefore it gets into the whole question of makshava, even though you didn't course him, but she didn't know that. So, but the Chafetz Chaim writes anyway that even if you're anal makbid, it's usher to do it. So the question is, why not? Again, if it's a be'ed adam l'chaveiro, so the issur is only, if I say I don't mind the harm, then it's mutter. So if someone's eino makbid, why should it be an issur of lashon hara? So maybe if we take the yisod of Rav Yaakov and Rav Chanan, and what we just discussed by Kibbutz Rav Aim, that perhaps there are two aspects. When we say there's an issur of lashon hara, it's twofold. There's an issur ben adam l'chaveiro of lashon hara, and there's an issur ben adam l'makom of lashon hara. The issur ben adam l'chaveiro is you're mazik, you're causing harm. In other words, you're ruining the person's good name. You're talking bad. Even if it's true, but you're causing harm to this person. So there's an issur of lashon hara, and then there's the ben adam l'makom that we know chasam l'shav hakadosh baruch hu emes. The stamp, the seal of hakadosh baruch hu is truth. So if we work along the lines of Rabbi Chanan, that every time you speak lashon hara, there's an element of sheker involved, so that's a violation out to the be'adam l'makom aspect. There's a be'adam l'chaveiro aspect of causing damage, and there's a be'adam l'makom aspect of speaking the truth. So they point out. So that's how they want to answer up. So let's say the Chafetz Chaim story, true or not true. Let's assume it's true. So what's the pshat? So Rav Yaakov says there's only lashon hara b'chaim, not li'achamis. There's only lashon hara b'chaim. So what's Rav Yaakov talking about? B'chaim, then we could talk about be'adam l'chaveiro. But la'achamisa, there's no concept of be'adam l'chaveiro anymore. So when Yaakov said there's no issur of speaking lashon hara, la'achamisa, he was talking about the be'adam l'chaveiro aspect, but ain't about the sheker aspect of Rabbi Chanan. Today there would be. In fact, that's how they want to explain how could the Torah give it over then? Because on one hand it's li'achamisa, so that takes care of the be'adam l'makom aspect. But in terms of how could they cause, what about causing the harm? So, as the Rabbi Chanan is saying, the Torah is giving it over directly. When the Torah gives it over, there's no exaggeration, so if there is no sheker, so therefore there's no problem of the be'adam l'makom.
It's a bit of a problem, unless you want to say, because the story of Miriam was written early. Like Miriam would have lived for another 38 years after the story, wouldn't she? Right? The story happened before he sent out, before Moshe sent out the Yavim. So when would the story of Miriam would have been throughout the Midbar? In other words, there it would have been written, and Moshe taught while Miriam was still alive. So Miriam would be a challenge to the argument was only after Misa.
But depending when the Torah was actually written down.
And that's what it's written down. But that's what I'm saying. It was enough time to argue that we're not talking something that was like, I mean, it's for sure Miriam could have lived for a few years.
No, right. That gets into whole, did Moshe write things down as
Parshas,
right?
Parshas,
Exactly.
Even Parshas.
No, correct. Clearly, Rabbi Yaakov is assuming in the kasha. Well, he's not talking about Miriam. He's talking about Mechiras Yosef.
But in that argument that says that the Misa, the After Misa, it's only to us, but the story of Miriam is clearly at where Miriam was still alive.
Right. Therefore, it's not kasha. That's why it's like Rabbi Chanan but the Torah is giving over the emes, so it's not a problem.
Right, but the argument, but applying that argument.
I'm saying combining both Rabbi Yaakov and Rabbi Chanan, we have our answer. If you assume both those
parts. That's a problem for Miriam. That's still not an answer for Miriam.
You're assuming Miriam was alive?
Yeah, because I would presume even.
Right, but according to Rabbi Chanan, it's not a problem. Because the Torah is giving it over the right way, so there's no.
No, I understand, but according to Rabbi Yaakov, according to the idea of saying it's Achar Misa, it's a problem because Miriam.
No, right, I agree, right. That's what I'm saying. If you combine both Rabbi Chanan and Rabbi Yaakov, then you can, right, because that's what they say. The story with the Chafetz Chaim said I learned there's no issue of lashon hara. That's out be'adam l'chaveiro. But be'adam l'makom, but the sheker aspect, that's still there. And same thing if you ain't no makbid. So there's no be'adam l'chaveiro damage, but out be'adam l'makom, the sheker aspect, it's still a problem. And maybe we can understand also the Chafetz Chaim writes by an interesting halacha by a katan. He writes that you can't. you can speak lashon hara about a katan unless you're causing damage to the katan, unless you're a mat. So the halach is normally, so you can't be the normal halach is ben chaveiro apply to a katan. I can't mavayish a katan. I can't hit a katan. So what's pshat with the Chafetz Chaim? What's he saying by katan? That why should katan be different? That it's only usher if you cause hezek. So maybe along these lines that out the katan we know he's not achrai. So we know we don't have that same image of him that we hold him responsible. So maybe we're not easily, even if you have the little sheker, it's not a problem because God's not holding him responsible. There's no B'Adam Lamakom. But in terms of if you cause him hezek, but the B'Adam Chavero, that's still, maybe that's what the Chafetz Chaim is getting at, that he says Dafke makes the distinction by a kata. But
let's say a child did something terrible, so it has to be told over. The mother tells the father, and the father made discipline in that society. That was for toelis, for chinuch, so therefore it's necessary, it's a necessary pulah to say something pejorative or something negative about a child underage who did something in order to set him chanuch na'al, so you can set him straight, so you can have him follow the right derech when he becomes a gadol.
right.
Why would that be different when he's not underage?
What? When he's underage.
No, what if he's not underage, but he's already 13, 14, when most of the misbehavior takes place?
Because that
You
was
look like a true educator.
well, they didn't live that long, and there was a lot of chinuch that took place before 12 at that time. But if you have all the conditions, the 7 conditions of toelis and this, not exaggerating, then you can do it even for someone overage, not even a katan, even for an adult. Once he's 13, he's the same as if he's 23. It's not a matter of the chinuch per se. Once he's 13, it's the same as
It's not so
33.
simple, the chinuch doesn't apply to him. Because it's not so simple, the chinuch ends at 13.
But no, but he's an adult. That's what I'm trying to put in.
Yeah,
They gotta be what? They gotta be what?
Chinuch can apply to a lot
They gotta be minion, yes.
Someone who's a slow grower can have chinuch at 28.
The chinuch still applies, so the heter of chinuch as a
Still
toelis
making-
will apply whether it's a katan or not a katan.
Right, so getting back, so we see a tremendous yisod from Rav Elchanan, that Rav Elchanan should show that in every, so basically, as Rav Hudna goes into it as well, explaining the same as Rav Elchanan, that really, what's the rationale most people have when they say Lashon Hara? Maybe they'll come up with a different one, but it's the truth. That's why so if a person realizes it's not the truth is really a lie, that you can't, by you giving over, you can never give it over the situation properly. So if you would realize beforehand that you can't give over the emes, then maybe you'd keep your mouth shut and not say the Lashon Hara. So in fact, that's the whole Yisod of Rav Hutner writes in many places, V'ahavta l'reacha kamocha. That was the famous other dispute, the Chafetz Chaim and Yisrael Salanter. Let's say you mavayish someone, you insult someone, but they don't know about it, and now you want to ask mechila. So the Chafetz Chaim claims, well, what can you do? It's Rabbeinu Yonah. You have to go to the guy, and if he asks, you have to tell him what you said about him. You were a jerk. I don't like you. Whatever you said. I guess either according to the Chafetz Chaim, you're not going to have too many friends, or you have to be careful. You'll be careful not to say anything. But the Chafetz Chaim writes, because that's crazy. He says, how could that be? But because I did an aveira of whatever it was, Lashon Hara or something else, and now I'm going to go ahead and cause harm by telling him what
Alienate him from you.
Exactly. So therefore, Yisrael Salanter says it can't be. So Rav Hutner writes, and then he has this piece throughout in his Pachad Yitzchak. He writes, what's the Yisrael v'yahavta l'reacha kamocha? Besides, obviously, I have a mitzvah to love you, but there's an implicit chiyuv as well, is you have to be an ahuv. That you have to make yourself, that not only do I have to love someone else, but I have to be beloved among the people. And that's how he goes into the whole reason for asking mechila, besides getting forgiven, it's to remove the heter tarumas, that someone shouldn't have a tain on you. That's why the Rambam writes, you only have to ask 3 times and no more. Torah writes it's a rishus. The Rambam writes, what's dafka 3? Because the point being is you have to do something to make yourself ahov. So therefore, so in this case, Rabbi Selevan would say, just do tshuva, charata, whatever you did, you don't have to actually go for it because there's no point. You're causing the person more harm. But the point being is, you have to make yourself beloved among others. That's what a person has to realize, that people think when they speak Lashon Hara, they think they're really gaining by it. Everyone's going to love them now. They gave them the dirt and all that. Like, you have people that sit around at a table. You have 7, 8, every time one person walks away, you start talking about, so one person, I'm not getting off my seat, I'm going to say, I'll be the last one to leave. But the point being is, if you speak Lashon Hara, you don't come off as a good person, you come off as a bitter person, angry, someone who's aggressive and not an ahov. So the mitzvah haftarecha kamocha is that you have to realize that you have to be an ahov. By speaking Lashon Hara, you're doing the opposite. And that's what we have to realize, as Rav Chanan just showed, that every truth is really a lie, and therefore one don't think it's the truth if that's the reason why you're saying it.
One can accomplish for the Yisrael Salanter and the Chafetz Chaim in the following way. It's called Batul B'Shishim. If one has called someone a bad name, terrible thing, and the person will never know about it unless you come to ask them for mechila. If you befriend that person, and again you do so many nice things to him, 60 things, and some things is a number, picking that number, then all of a sudden, after being friends with the person for several months, and you're his best buddy, and you treated him to this, and you went out, and then all this, by the way, I'm so sorry, what slipped out 6 months ago that I did this and this, and I said something about you. The person will not be alienated because the power of love is so strong and the connections are there that he will not. So I'm just trying to give you a derech to accommodate both of them.
Exactly, you have to have assets. Yeah,
if you have a great love and accomplishment with someone, and the bonding is there, having said something about them a few months ago, after you've accomplished so much good and positive with them, the person will not be alienated. He'll say, "Oh, I forgive you. You're my friend." And he'll hug you.
Actually, it was funny because someone once said, when they were asking for mechila, they said, one time I actually said something about you. They didn't tell me what. It really wasn't that bad. I'm wondering. What did I didn't want to go into? They asked him what he said. I didn't want to get into the machlokas. But that's what we see by Lashon Hara. So just like we have by Kibbutz Avayim, we have the concept of the B'Adam L'Makom and B'Adam L'Chaveros. So perhaps if we combine the Rav Yaakov and Rav Moshe, there's an Isser Al B'Adam L'Chavero. That's the Isser Mazik. That's the Isser of causing a person harm. But in addition, whether L'Acham Misanat, there's an aspect of B'Adam L'Makom, and that's the Sheker Shabo, and that's what we have to be careful.
Is that your own? Like you said by First Shakra said that chiluk by Kibbutz Avayim, but this chiluk in Lashon Hara.
Yeah, I didn't know. I saw it in different svarim. They didn't discuss it explicitly, but
so the application of that chiluk is yours. I mean,
or just in one of the svarim, I'm saying is they discussed. They didn't discuss the whole detail, but that's the way I understood it. Whether they actually said it or not.
Okay.
No, I was just thinking because I was doing the Kibbutz Avayim, so then I thought about the Lashon Hara in terms of also has that dual aspect.